Greetings and welcome to the Art of Rising, the Omzia Healing Sanctuary. We're coming out of North Bergen, New Jersey. I have a very special guest with me today, Fidel Moreno. He has a long resume, and I'm just so excited to have him. I've been after him like for weeks, if not months, man, but the guy is finally with us. He's going to be with us actually in the Purple Sage Festival in June 15th. So let's just bring him in, see what he's got to say, introduce himself, and all of that. Welcome, brother. Welcome.
Thank you, Omar. Thank you. I'm really humbled, honored, and really happy to be here with you, brother. I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, and it's a really exceptional technology that you're using to, connect people and get the word out and bring visibility to some really wonderful things going on in communities, in the planet, North America, all over the globe. So thank you so much, brother.
For sure. I mean, if nobody's impressed by the technology that's going on now, then they're from another planet, right?
Right, exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly.
Okay. So Fidel
Yeah.
Moreno, wow, I have
Yeah.
so much respect for you, and you're a great brother, man, and you just treat me as an equal, and you've already made it clear that there's no hierarchy here, and I love that, man. Thank you for
Absolutely.
embracing me, brother. Gracias, hermano. Gracias. So why
Even
don't you tell
Steven,
me?
I, brother, heart to heart,
Right.
you know?
Yep, I know. I know how
We're
you
all
do.
learning. We're all in the circle of learning and life loving life. That's what we're doing.
I was introduced to you by another great brother, Diesel, right? And the brother's
Harry.
another brother too.
Yeah, I'll
Yep.
be seeing him. I'll be seeing him up in Binghamton. We're gonna have a fire circle, a drum circle, and maybe build a sweat lodge up there for the community.
That's what he tells me. That's what he
Yeah,
tells me. Beautiful.
yeah. No, I'm looking forward to coming back to the Northeast, man. I love the woods. I love the mountains. I love the water, the river, the waterfalls. That's why I'm in Ithaca for 4 to 6 months, man. 150 waterfalls within 5 miles of Ithaca. Amazing.
So
You know?
why don't we just jump right into it, man? Tell me a little bit
Okay,
about
let's do it.
yourself, where you've come from, your journey, a part of
Sure,
that, and a bit of
sure.
your resume too. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
hear it.
yeah. Well, first of all, I want to just say and honor my father and mother right now. My mom is 84, Connie, and still going strong. She owns a 50-year real estate business, and she's a really special lady, and I'm really blessed to have her as my mother. I know it took a lot of ancestors and myself to choose her as the vessel and carrier, life carrier for me. So I just want to say, thank you, Mom. And she might poke her head in here when she gets in here to tell me to come eat. She's like that. Anyway, and I also want to honor my father who just passed January 1st, 90 years old. And love you, Dad. Miss you, Dad. And I know you're right here with me all the time, behind me and beside me, taking care of me, watching over me. So I just want to honor my ancestors that way too, and say thank you to my great grandparents and my grandparents, maternal grandparents and paternal grandparents. Yeah, I was born in South Side of Chicago, old G, South Side of Chicago, Blue Island in California, and yeah, on my mom's side, I'm Mexican and also Sephardic Jewish descent, somewhere way back there through my mother's father's mother, whom I knew, my aunt, my grandma Rafaelita, my great grandmother, and then to my mother on my mother's side, there's Huichol lineage there, Huiraquira, and then on my dad's side, I'm Zacateco and Mexican. Um, I'm really proud of all of those lineages because they're who I am and they're who I come from. And I wouldn't be me if I didn't have that wonderful mix, of different cultures from the Middle East, from indigenous North America, and also from Mexico. And I'm really proud of all those things. Um, So I grew up on the south side of Chicago. Then we moved to Aurora, and then I spent a lot of summers. I spent time from 7 to 11 with my maternal grandparents in a little town called Colotlan, Jalisco. It's got still has its native name. Chichimeca name means scorpions. It's semi-tropical, and then the rest of the time has been learning and growing, brother. Went to college at Augustana College, and then I went to Aurora University. My dad had some health issues, and I stayed at Aurora University. And I met a man. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to two teachers, Elizabeth McShane and Miss Myrtle Gray at Aurora East, my 7th and my 8th and ninth grade teachers. Miss Elizabeth McShane, who's my art teacher, and Miss Myrtle Gray, who's my ninth grade English teacher. And they both taught me how to think critically. The first book I read from cover to cover was Soul on Ice by Eldridge Cleaver. The second book I read from cover to cover was The Prophet by Gahil Gibran.
Mm-hmm.
The book I read was Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And then I just kept reading, and I loved reading. Also, Miss Myrtle Gray took some of us who were challenged with literacy skills, basic reading and writing skills. She took us to plays. The first play I saw was Macbeth, and it was a very intense play for me. And the second play I saw was the Monkey Scopes trial about Clarence Darrow, from the turn of the century activist, labor rights lawyer. And I thought I wanted to be a lawyer for a long time. I worked for lawyers, and my mom knew lawyers because of her real estate business and introduced me to several lawyers. And I ended up working for lawyers in college, in between college years. And I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And I got a camera put in my hand in Chicago at the American Indian Center in uptown Chicago. And at the American Indian Center, I met a little old lady named Annie Winishek, Winnebago, Hochungara, people of the parent tongue, people of the loud voice. And she gave me a box with a bunch of camera parts and said, "You went to college, make a camera. I want to talk to you about residential school." God bless her heart. There were no video parts. They were all still camera parts. And but I went and got a camera from Public Access. There was a guy there that I was introduced to by Raul Rios, who's one of my first film mentors. He was a creative director for 3R Group, a small advertising company in Chicago. And Raul basically taught me and gave me the love of moving images, the love of storytelling. And Annie Winishek and some of her friends started telling me about residential schools. And I'd never heard of residential schools. And they started telling me about the horrible, horrible things that they did to them. Native people, washing their mouth out, not letting them speak their language, cutting their hair off, making them dress with different clothes, and not allowing them to be in their culture. That was the first I'd ever heard about residential schools and American Indians. And it was very, very, very intense, very high impact, very impactful for me, because my father went to a government boarding school in Mexico, and he never really talked about it. Later on, we talked about it, but that opened up my whole world to Native America. And I had an uncle that was he was a radical. He was left, very left, socialist. Gregorio Moreno. He was a border activist, and they murdered him. But my uncle spoke to me about indigenous cultures, indigenous systems, and European systems, and had me understand the differences between them. I must have been a junior in high school when I started spending time with him in El Paso, and I would cross the border because his wood shop was in Juarez. and I was staying with my dad's older sister who passed away recently, Salome Soto. Anyway, it just politicized me. You know, I started to look at the world from a perspective of conflict and class struggle and dualism, and realized that there were forces at work, powerful forces at work that designed and created poverty and lack of material resources. And I noticed that the poverty pockets, the poverty environments, you know, were people that look like me. We're indigenous, we're brown, we're black, we're red, we're women. And of course, you know, there's poverty in white America too. And that's part of the system. You know, it's part of the system to create scarcity and to create anger and racism and bitterness and hate, so that we don't communicate, we don't help one another, we don't support one another. And that opened up my whole mind to ask questions. You know, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why is this like this? Why is there so much poverty? Why is there lack of, you know, in the world? I know there's medicine, I know there's hospitals, I know there's doctors, you know, I know that there's materials to make houses. I know that the food is in abundance because I came from a small village that was all orchards, pomegranates, papaya, mangoes, all the citruses, you know. And I ate cactus, you know, and I was like, I know there's food, beans, cactus, rice. My grandfather had animals. I didn't lack for anything. And I kept asking, why is there so much poverty when there's so much abundance? How can there be so much poverty? How can there be so much disease? How can there be so much hatred when there's so much abundance and so much positive things in the world? Why is there these dichotomies? Why are there these extreme opposites? You know, I started asking these questions in my teens, from 14 to like 18, and then I went to college and I met a man named Greg Barrick, he came out of the Berkeley Radical School of Criminology, and he was a professor, and he was the author of a book called In Defense of Whom, and it was of the first critique of the public defender system. And I said, you know what? That's what I want to study. I want to study crime. I want to study criminology. I want to study sociology. I want to study psychology. I want to study history. I want to study philosophy. I want to study political science, because they're all interconnected. You know, they're all interconnected. And man, I just took off. I just took off, you know. And I don't know, maybe you have a question right now. I've kind of gone on a little bit, but
Yeah, I'm curious to know, did you set out saying, hey, you know, I'm gonna do my part and change the world? Or was it like, hey, yeah, I'll help out, I'm available, and you just kind of slipped in?
well, you know, it's interesting because my uncle was a radical. You know, he was a border activist, and he would build these shantytown artist, you know, villages where maquiladoras, where corporations wanted to build maquiladoras. And you know, he talked to me about what was going on in Mexico, and he shared with me that Mexico is wealthy, abundant in natural resources. You know, and I mean, just to give you an example, 70% of the chili, hatch green chili that people buy that they think is hatch green chili, comes from Mexico, bro. Comes from Mexico. And they bring it in bags and put it in bags that says hatch green chili, and they sell it to the tourists. It's coming from
Right,
Mexico. Our
right,
avocados, our beans, our onions, our tomatoes, our
right.
lettuce,
Strawberries. Mm-hmm.
strawberries coming from Mexico.
Yeah.
Pineapples, Mexico.
Right.
You know, and further places, Costa Rica and El Salvador. But all those countries live in poverty, bro. They live in poverty
Mm-hmm.
because the big, you know, the big monstrosity of this capitalist system that the United States is exploits these people, exploits these cultures, exploits these lands. And native people have been exploited, and you know, there's been a conquest and there's colonization. And what happened to the native people is an amazing example of how a system, an environment that's racist and classist can totally destroy a people. And there was genocide upon them. I mean, there was a systematic genocidal plan of execution and oppression, you know, that happened to the native people in South America, Central America, North America, you know?
Yeah.
And when I started to look at the roles of institutions, political institutions, religious institutions, social institutions, these are man-made constructions. These are man-made. These aren't, you know, like they're not neutral things that just grew, you know, under the sun with water and rain and wind and no, these things were man-made, and they were designed with certain elements for purposeful division, divide and conquer. You know, I mean, it's not by accident, brother, that, you know, you come from a part of the world and you speak Spanish. I come from Mexico and I speak Spanish. There was indigenous cultures there. There was indigenous cultures where you were that had their own language, their own geopolitical systems, cultural systems. You know,
Right.
And here we are in the great U.S. of A. And you know, we're a couple thousand, you know, 1,500 miles from each other, but we come through some very interesting processes, historical processes, and truths, you know, that we both agree on, and many people in our camps agree on certain aspects of our social, political, spiritual, human experience.
Perhaps you could tell, Fidel, maybe you could tell me a little bit about, you know, what made you start, because I see that your family members were involved too, but like,
Yeah,
as time went by, I know some of your resume goes along with the movie industry as well, right? Because there was
yeah,
filming that was going on and you started to work with some big players. So,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
tell me, how did that happen?
Okay, let me step back 1 second, because in college I organized my first action, direct action. I brought in Dick Gregory, the activist, fasting comic, and the college, Alan Stone, who was the president at the time, actually got a lot of pushback from the board of directors, the regents of Aurora College. It was Aurora College at the time. Now it's Aurora University, and he called me, says, I've got to cancel this gathering, this rally that you're bringing in Dick Gregory, and he paid for it. He paid for Dick Gregory to come, but he got all this pushback. That was my first direct action. And of course, they didn't allow Dick Gregory to come onto campus. We tried to find another place. And at the time, Aurora was not a very progressive left community, you know. And so Dick Gregory was canceled. So why, you know, why film? You know, I've always loved movies. I mean, ironically, you know, my dad and I used to watch the old classics, you know, the Paul Newman film, oh God, where Eats All the Eggs, Cool Hand Luke.
Cool Hand Luke.
We watched all those classics, man. You know, when movies were movies, and I loved historical features. I loved historical dramas. You know, Robin Hood, King Arthur, you know, the Knights of the Round Table. I mean, those to me were like amazing. The superheroes, you know, Superman, Batman, Robin, all of these superheroes, Spider-Man, Kaliman, all these guys were like amazing to me, right? I mean, they were like real to me. And I realized that in this world of so much anger and hate and classism and racism, that there's these heroes out there, these hero archetypes doing something, you know, saving lives, you know, doing something good, stopping a train from wrecking and killing hundreds of people, stopping a bomb from going off and killing thousands of people. I mean, these things were like, even though they were on the fringe of imagination, you know, and fantasy, to me, I was like, wow, you know, you can do something. We can do something. We can stop violence. We can stop a violent action. We can stop a violent person, a dictator. You know, we can stop, you know, certain things. We can do certain things. We can mobilize. We can organize. We can multiply. We can identify. We can we can activate. You know, I thought about those things, and you know, I used to go to bed early to daydream about how I could change the world with Superman and Batman and Spider-Man. You know,
Right.
guys, so I had this imagination, and my first job, I got a job working with Howard Rosenberg, who was his first film he directed was Cool Hand Luke. I got my first job on a film called Let's Get Harry with Robert Duvall and Glenn Fry and Gary Busey, you know, Mark Harmon, all these guys, and it was shot in Aurora, and I remember this one lady, you know, I found out that there was a movie being done in the paper. There was a story in the paper, and there was a number. I contacted her. I said, "Hey, I want to work on this film. Do you have any experience?" I said, "No, but I want to work on this film." And she goes, "All right, come meet me. Come for an interview." She met me, and you know, I got to say, I'm thankful, because I don't know what touched her heart, touched her mind, but she hired me. I had no experience, but you know, I guess some film crews, they hire a certain number of people from the community as part of good public relations. I was the only person of color. I can remember there's no African Americans, no other Mexicans, no other natives. You know, it was just a bunch of white people from that came from LA, and it impacted me. You know, I got to meet Gary Busey, I got to meet Glenn Fry from the Eagles, I got to meet, you know, Robert Duvall, who was such a wonderful gentleman. You know, and Howard Rosenberg was an amazing person. He actually, like, who, you know, talked to me at lunchtime when we're eating. What are you doing? You live here. What do you want to do? What, you know, what's your background? What are some of your skill sets? He took the time to talk with me. I learned a lot from that first feature film, and I never looked back. You know, I worked on Shirley Sue. I've worked on 21 Grams. I've worked on several films. Dark Wind. I worked on Backdraft. And then
Yep.
I started working on my own documentaries, you know.
I saw that. I saw that Backdraft. Yes. And then you're also an Oscar nominated director, correct? For Wiping the Tears, 1991.
Yeah, Wiping the Tears of Seven Generations. That was a film as an interesting story, because the late, great Gary Ryan, who's an amazing human being, he was of Jewish. I started meeting Jewish people, you know, around that time too, because a lot of the Jewish community is involved in filmmaking, in media, film, music, and Gary took me under his wing, and we never met. We worked out. He did the Bigfoot ride up in South Dakota, which was a memorial ride to bring attention to Bigfoot and the massacre at Wounded Knee. So I interviewed the Wounded Knee Survivors Association elders. These were descendants of survivors of the 1890 Wounded Knee massacre. And there was a brother, a Cuban brother. Oh man, his name is escaping me now, but he's married into the Akwesasne Mohawk tribe. Jose Barrero. Beautiful human being. He was the editor for the Northeast Quarterly, a Native American publishing. He's married to Gudgy Cook, Tom Cook's sister. Tom knew Gary. Tom was married to Loretta Freda Lakota, and they've been involved in the Black Hills fight, you know, and to return to the Black Hills. So I met Gary Ryan finally after we edited our pieces together. Several people saw my work, my interviews, and saw his interviews of the riders and horse ride. And people told us, you guys need to make this one film. So we started sending film and scripts back and forth. We never met. And the first time we screened it at a film festival was the first time we met. And it got shortlisted for being nominated for best short documentary at the Academy Awards at an Oscar.
Wow.
And you know, and again, my mantra for the last 20 years has been, this is how Creator works. This is how God works. You know, we think control. We think we're the ones that what do they say? Man makes plans and God laughs.
Right. I love that one. Yeah.
You know,
If you
and
want to make God laugh, yeah,
say,
tell him your plans.
yeah, I mean, yes, it's important. 50, 60, 70, 80% is showing up. And then when you show up, God puts other people there in your sphere of line of vision and in your radius of hearing and your energy, your human energy, and you connect with other human beings who have similar soul language, soul reflection, soul energy, And Gary and I just clicked. Annie Winishek and I clicked. I've met so many amazing people. Leonard Littlefinger, Reuben Snake, an elder who I spent the last 10 years of his life working with. Amazing people. Elizabeth Sackler, wonderful Barbara Ettinger, wonderful non-Indian people who had compassion and generosity and the will to do something good.
Yes, I hope.
People of color. I mean, it's amazing. It keeps happening over and over and over again.
And I know that you're also involved in the Native American Church. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? How did
Yeah,
you get into it? What's it doing for you? And
yeah.
you seem like
I
so
know.
devoted, man.
I know that in my gene, in my DNA, coming from Colotlan, coming from that part of Mexico, and the people I come from on my mom's side, I know that we have that lineage that comes from that medicine, the Wirarica, Huichol. And I remember the first time I ate that medicine, I just felt like I'm home.
Hmm.
I felt like this is part of me. And I just came from an amazing meeting with David Marbane and Chan of Morningstar Peyote Conservancy. They're up in Eugene, up in Ashland, Oregon. I just flew up there and I had an amazing, amazing, amazing experience with them. I met their community. I sat up and prayed with young men up there from the Modoc tribe and met some beautiful brothers, Aaron and Cedar and Robert Pedro.
Uh-oh. Yeah. Fidel, I cannot hear you no more. I can't hear you, brother. Uh-oh, technical difficulties.
What's that?
I was losing you on the audio, but you're back again. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, Cornell University, Leslie, who's the assistant director of the American Indian and Indigenous Studies program at Cornell, worked with us to co-host an evening 4-hour panel discussion. There was a screening of the film Killers of the Flower Moon. I want to ask people who are listening or who will listen to this to please read the book Killers of the Flower Moon. The author's name is escaping me right now, but the film is a feature 3.5-hour length film with Scorsese, De Niro, and DiCaprio, and beautiful young, a lot of amazing, talented Native American, indigenous people that worked on that film, and I just, I was blown away by this amazing story of the killing of hundreds of Osage tribal members for their oil and gas royalties,
Right.
and this is also the story of the beginning, the roots of the FBI, which J. Edgar Hoover hired some retired Texas Rangers to start asking questions, in this town where the Osage were being killed, and being murdered. And amazing. I mean, this has happened all over South America, Central America, Mexico, North
Yeah,
States,
for
and Canada.
sure. That
Native
was
people for their land
David
sources.
David Grand. David Grand, by the way. That's the author's name, David Grand.
Okay.
And I put it up
David
there on the
Grand?
screen so people
David
can, yeah.
Grand? Okay.
That's what it
David
says.
Grand.
Yeah.
Amazing, 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 amazing. Oh, Grant. Okay. David Grant. Amazing film. Amazing story. And
Killer of the Flower Moon, correct?
yes, Killers of the Flower Moon. And I started talking to a friend of mine, Laura Cox, who does some work with, some folks in the film industry. And her and I started talking, and we said, when this film comes out, it's going to move people. It's going to shift some things in people, and it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to engage in a deeper dialogue between Native America and white privileged America. And right away, I started talking to some of the interfaith network communities, interfaith communities here in Houston. I was invited to an interfaith spring interfaith gathering, I think for Thanksgiving, and I shared a prayer, shared a song, and then I put it before the interfaith network and said, hey, what if, I love those two words, what if we could come together with trauma therapists, Christian ministers, and indigenous tribal healers, and so we brought my roadman, James S. City Jr., who's been my roadman for 33 years, and he brought his nephews, Isaac and Dean, and Mona, one of 13 indigenous grandmothers, was there. Mona Polaka, Havasupai Hopi, who does a lot of activism and is a lot of advocacy for indigenous rights of the earth. She's one of 13 indigenous grandmothers, and Austin Nunez, who's like the chairman of the Tono Autumn community in San Javier, right outside of Tucson. There's amazing people, doing things for the earth, for the water, for indigenous people, for youth, for medicine, sacred plants. We brought them all together here in Conroe at a really beautiful 25-acre property that's owned by a church, Agape Church, body, mind, and spirit. They're amazing. And Sergio and Raquel, thank you for doing something good and coming here to Texas. It's interesting. Texas, I didn't realize. I mean, there's some amazing people in Texas and amazing things are happening, but there's also a pushback by a very conservative, right-wing, Bible Belt energy that is so closed-minded and so myopic, that they make it hard to have an open, transparent conversation, dialogue about healing. One of the churches nearby here in Kingwood, one of the associate pastors texted me that we have different, that they have a different doctrine than I do, and they can't support or participate in what we're doing. And my first response, brother, was, wait a minute, I follow the doctrine of Jesus Christ, the gospel of Jesus Christ. 80% of his gospel is healing people that had demons, that were sick, that were hurting, that were hungry.
Right.
I mean, that's the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Brother's in need, help him. If your brother's hungry, feed him. If your sister's naked, clothe her.
Right. It's crazy. It's crazy. To my understanding, Jesus, the Christ, he was hanging out with the prostitutes, pimps, drug dealers, all that. He was with the homeless. Yeah.
Bad
You know what I'm
guys.
saying? He wasn't hanging out with the priests.
Right.
If anything, he spoke negative about them because they were not open to that healing.
Yeah.
And I know that there are some people that they do have an issue with the peyote, which is a cactus, and it is psychoactive. But to my research, in 1991, the Native American Church won a Supreme Court ruling, correct, to use peyote as a holy sacrament.
Well, what happened was that the U.S. Supreme Court decision in the Al Smith case was reversed by an act of Congress through the American Indian Religious Freedom Act, and Scalia had ruled against it, saying that Native Americans could not enjoy the privilege of protection because they just shouldn't. And Native people have been using these sacred plants for millennia.
Yeah.
Before this country was even established, and there's always been a conflict between the church, religion, and those women and men who are in the natural world, leading natural lives and using natural plants, sacred plants in their worship, in their prayer, in their sacred space. And when Jesus came, I mean, he came to save those that needed saving. And I totally appreciate that and respect that. The Native people did not need saving. The Native people were healthy, had their own political systems, their own social, political, geopolitical systems in place, had their own sacred spiritual understanding of the universe, of the earth. They understood all these things. They had their own language, they had their own cultural systems in place. And we know the story. The English, the Dutch, the Spanish, the French, they came, they came with disease, they came with syphilis, they came with gonorrhea, they came with alcohol, they came with
with the common cold. They didn't have no defense on some of these things.
Some of the historians are saying up to 100 million to 140 million people, were decimated since contact, because of contact. That's more than World War I and II and all the wars put together.
Right. I mean, it is a shame.
I know my Jewish brothers and relatives, they take ownership of that Holocaust, and they have a right to take ownership of that, and never let it happen again. I totally agree with that. But I also know this, that the indigenous people of North America, the indigenous people of South America, Central America, we experienced the Holocaust too.
Oh yeah, and far larger numbers.
40 to 160 million people were decimated, killed by wars, disease, starvation.
Yeah, by some estimations, they say also that it was far bigger and far tragic more than even the slave trade.
Right. But you know what? I want
lots of people.
Yeah, all we need to do is to read. It's all there now in books and in the research. People know, and the thing I want to talk about is that we are at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads in evolutionary consciousness, in the way we understand food, the way we understand our bodies, the way we understand our minds. I mean, just this morning, Sanjay Gupta on CNN, the doctor for CNN, talked about MDMA and it being to treat trauma and PTSD.
Yes.
I mean, talk about slow learners. I mean, it's amazing to me that we're just now seeing this, and yet we've had hundreds of thousands of young people addicted to heroin, opiates, fentanyl, and dying. We're at epidemic numbers of young dying because of these pharmaceuticals. And many young people. I mean, during COVID, I was traveling to different parts of the country and attending ecstatic dance communities and ecstatic dance gatherings and circles, and I met the most well-behaved young people with masters in permaculture, in marine biology, in science, in philosophy, in world religions, and they were eating healthy food. They were growing food. They weren't drinking pop and they weren't drinking beer and tequila. I mean, they were like looking at their consciousness and their physical construction of a body and its relationship to the earth, the environment, each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, and I do. I also feel that, sometimes things have to get way worse in order for them to get better. So when you see this madness, which is it's crazier than it has ever been, probably in your lifetime, in your parents' lifetime, right? I mean, it's way out. But you start to meet people that are more conscious now.
Yeah.
And more conscious about the eating, about the food, about being in touch spiritually. The world is changing.
For me, what I find hopeful is there's children, babies being born by young people and adults and grandparents that are saying no more. No mas. Roberto Duran's not the only one saying no mas, brother. There's people, there's hundreds of thousands of people saying no more. No more war. No more greed. No more killing each other, and killing the earth for digging up oil and minerals and lithium and cadmium. I mean, it's like it has to stop. I think our generation and the younger generation and the children that are being born right now, being brought up with that consciousness. I hear some music in the background. What's going on, brother?
No, not me. No.
Are we coming
No.
to a commercial break, or is that big government trying to stop?
Yeah, I know they're tapping in, brother. You, I hear them. They're at the door right now, but that's
All
okay.
right,
We're ready for them.
that's
We're ready.
okay, because there's a lot of doors, brother. They can
I
knock
know.
down this door, but there's a lot of doors.
Yeah, I
You know,
know. They can
get
never
in line.
extinguish that. No,
Get
the
in
truth will
line.
always come out. Truth
Yeah.
always comes out. Always, always, no matter what.
So
Like,
so
you know,
so
I
so right now we have an amazing thing that happened after this gathering here in Conroe. I went and I met so many young people, Aaron and Cedar and Robert Pedro and Jasiah. I mean, I met all these young people, these amazing young people sitting all night with respect and prayer and singing and praying. And our brother Eric, Paul, who sat as a sponsor, he's 32 years old, 38 years old, and he's got this beautiful wife, David's daughter, and he's got these two beautiful daughters, Amada and the little girl, and he's got a little baby boy on the way, born. She could go into labor anytime. I just heard she might go into labor this afternoon or evening. And he's sitting there
okay.
owning his life and saying, I'm tired. I'm done. I'm tired of the drugs and the alcohol and the negative thinking. I'm tired of going down these paths that are not honoring of life, honoring of me, honoring of God, honoring of my wife, honoring of my in-laws, honoring of my, his mother passed away of cirrhosis of the liver. So he grew up without his mother. And his dad was an artist, from Mexico. And I haven't met him. I've heard a lot of good things about him, but I also children. Sometimes there were women there, and sometimes there weren't. We know those stories. I lived those stories.
Yes, yes,
I'm
yes.
still healing. I'm still healing. The hearts of several of my children that saw me in my addiction. I'm still
I know.
healing my own heart and still healing the heart of some of the mothers of my children that I abandoned, that I did not, I was not the man that they wanted me to be, that they
Right,
prayed to be. And
right.
so I've learned some hard lessons. You know what? I've learned. And I was at this meeting and it was amazing. It was beautiful. It was powerful. It was transformational. And I had this idea, when two eagles mate, brother, I don't know if you know this, but when eagles mate, the female is bigger and stronger. She has more muscle mass. And the female eagle goes in the crosswinds and cross currents and flies around and does these patterns of flying, and the male eagle tries to shadow her and tries to be with her, and
Mm,
but doesn't quite get up as high as the female eagle, and the female eagle will get with the sun right behind her and go to hit that eagle to knock it off balance, and it'll start picking up sticks and dropping off bigger and bigger sticks for that eagle to pick up those sticks, to pick those
mm,
sticks in midair, not
mm,
let them drop. Guess who knocks the eaglets out of the nest?
mm.
Who do you think knocks the eaglets out of the nest, brother?
I don't know.
Who gives birth? Who
Of
created those?
course.
Who carried those eaglets? Those eggs?
Yeah,
Female mother.
I know. That was my first thought. Yes.
She knocks those eaglets out of the nest. Guess who has to catch them?
The
Because she
male,
knocks who?
the male.
Male.
Yeah,
The male has to
wow.
catch them.
Wow.
So I was thinking about this, because I heard the word atza, and they're thinking of naming the little boy Eric and his wife's boy uh, Luz Angelica. That's Eric's wife. They're thinking of naming the baby boy the Navajo, because Eric is half Navajo. His mom was Dene, his dad's Mexican, but naming the little boy Atsa, something like that means eagle. So I start thinking about that, and I start thinking that Eric is going to totally be there for his family, his wife, his children. And when they fall, when they're ready to get out of the nest, and walk on their own and walk in this world, in this reality, that Eric will be there to catch them when they fall.
Mm-hmm.
I started
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that, because I started talking with my brother Aaron, that's Modoc from up there, and start talking with Jazz, and start talking with Cedar, and talk with Elijah,
Mm-hmm.
some other young people there, my brother Nick and Tony, and we start saying we have to start showing up as men. We have to start showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Thought of the
Yes.
idea of in native languages, what is the word to catch?
Mm-hmm.
How can we as men start to catch these young men and women that are falling out of the nest, maybe hurt themselves or get killed,
Mm-hmm.
falling into the streets. They're falling into the drugs. They're falling into the alcohol. They're falling into the gang violence. They're falling into the prisons, into suicidal thinking and behavior. A young man talked about being suicidal in the morning, you know? So I started thinking, how can we create this movement, this wave, this society of men to show up and start being strong and catching these eaglets that are falling? How can
Mm-hmm.
Let's start talking. So I put it out to some of my brothers, and people want to talk. So our
Mm-hmm.
next thing is, I'm coming back. I'm flying June 10th back to Vermont. We're gonna harvest some teepee poles. I bought a 30-foot teepee from a Mohawk brother, and we're probably gonna have a meeting, a dedication teepee meeting, the first Saturday of August. I
Mm-hmm.
know we have Lionsgate family camp out with my brother Cosmic Theo Whitley, and all the
Mm-hmm.
up there, Sammy and Sam and
Yeah, I met Theo.
brothers up there. You met him at the house meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Theo's been putting on this amazing festival, family camp out for 5 years. I've been involved the last 2 years. I'll be involved again this year. We want to put up the teepee, and we want to have a drum time. We want to have gourd making. Want to have talking circles, and but we're also going to be a grassroots. Hopefully, I was talking to Lurch, who is in charge of the program with grassroots. They've been around for 32 or 34 years as a festival,
Mm,
and
that's
they're
great.
they're up near Ithaca, and so I'm just inspired to start bringing some brothers together. Have these brothers like Cedar and Aaron and Jazz come up. Come up to Ithaca, meet you.
Okay.
Meet
Yes.
Jeff and meet Theo, meet Milo. Meet our brothers and sisters up there and start just
Great.
sharing
Yeah.
our experiences.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
And
Let's do it.
start that
You know,
that
you know, I'm with
chemistry.
it.
Start
We
that
do.
chemistry of
You
respect,
already
love,
know. Yeah.
honor.
Yes. I'm sorry, brother. We also do men's work. You know that we do
Yeah,
men's retreats, and
right.
we're looking to just
Good
continue
work.
that. That'll
It's good.
never stop. Oh,
Uh,
it's good work. It's work that nobody wants to do. You don't know how many times if I had a nickel for every time somebody told me, "Man,
yeah,
brother, you
yeah,
helped me so
right,
much."
right.
And I also wanted to add that I had mentioned on another podcast that when I
Yeah,
had first met you,
yeah.
I said, wow, you have all this knowledge. I want to learn from you. And
Hmm.
one of the things you told me, you said, brother, I give you some advice that was given to me. You should speak about the things that you've experienced, not about the things that you know.
Yeah,
It hit me like a ton of bricks, man. I always take that with me. And I
yeah,
try to watch my speech.
yeah,
Something I read in a book, no,
yeah,
that's different. But if I
yeah,
experienced it,
yeah.
then you can speak on it and you can tell your own. So I thank you so much for that. But we're coming to a close. I
Okay.
wanted to also say that we're going to have the festival on June
Yep,
15th, the
yep,
Purple Sage Festival, and you're going to be there. So
yep.
maybe you could tell us real quickly about what is it that you're going to be providing for the people, for the young people, and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Well, I'm gonna do some leather work and craft work with the children, and some storytelling. We're gonna have some fire circles, and the last one of the things we've forgotten to do as a society, as a people, is conversation, brother. Sharing time and space with each other around a fire, you know. So I'm also going to be tying up a drum and asking some brothers to come up with her with me and sing some songs. Just some type of drum and share some songs, shake that rattle, and just feel good together, you know. So
Yep.
that's what I'm hoping to do up there and meet some people and meet some families, meet some young men and young women, and you know, see where they're at, see what's going on with them, and just be of service, be of support. Reuben Snake used to say this word all the time, you know, haiki duty, hochungara word, which means if brother is fallen, your brother has stumbled, your brother has tripped, or your sister and brother have tripped or fallen, get him by the arm and pick him up and hold him and walk with him, you know, haiki duty. And so I don't know, I just want to be, you know, in a good humble way of help if it's needed, you know, and address some
Thank
things
you.
that you know I know need to be addressed, you know, in our
Thank
community
you. Thank
cultures.
you. I appreciate you. You already know what you see is what you get. I
Yeah,
try to be as transparent as
yeah,
possible.
yeah,
I'm consistent. I
yeah,
never say it's green when it's blue.
yeah,
It's blue. That's it. This
yeah,
is me.
yeah.
I mean, really, really, my journey has come a long way, and you're a part of it. Thank you so much for coming
Thank you for having.
through and speaking, brother. Oh, it
Thank.
means so much to me.
My
Thank
mom
you
just
so
came to
much.
dinner time, so good timing. God bless you, man. Big hug,
God
brother.
bless, brother. Okay.
All right. God bless
Peace
you,
and
fam.
love, brother.
Your
Thank
wife.
you. Yeah. All right, guys. There you have it, man. Fidel Moreno. Look him up, man. He's got a rich history and his resume is really long. I mean, this guy, he didn't say half of the things that he's been involved in and that has experience. So I'm waiting for his movie to come out. I'm sure it will. Thank you so much for joining us, family. I see you at the Purple Sage. And anybody who's listening to this podcast and has made it up to this point, just mention that you were listening to this podcast and we want to give you a free gift. And it will be a Purple Sage on June 15th. Come through. We take care of you. Peace and love.